On July 25, 1934, the July Putsch was launched when a coup d'etat in Austria took place against the Fatherland Front government of Engelbert Dollfuss by Austrian Nazis. During the Putsch, members of the Austrian Legion and the Austrian Schutzstaffel, backed by Nazi Germany, attempted to overthrow Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss's Austro-fascist government and replace it with a pro-Nazi administration led by Anton Rentelen of the Christian Social Party. The conspirators stormed the federal chancellery and assassinated Dollfuss, but most Austrians and the Austrian army remained loyal to the existing government. The coup ultimately collapsed after Adolf Hitler withdrew his support when Fascist Italy pledged diplomatic backing for Austria against any potential German invasion. The Austrian government regained control after 6 days of fighting that left more than 200 people dead. Many Austrian Nazis and their collaborators were arrested, convicted of treason, and either executed or imprisoned. Kurt Schuschnigg succeeded Dollfuss as chancellor, and the Fatherland Front continued to govern the federal state of Austria until the country was annexed by Germany in the 1938 Anschluss. On July 25, 1943, during World War II, Benito Mussolini, fascist dictator of Italy, was voted out of power by his own Grand Council and arrested upon leaving a meeting with King Victor Emmanuel III, who told Mussolini that the war was lost. Mussolini responded to it all with an uncharacteristic meekness. During the evening of July 24th and the early hours of the 25th, the Grand Council of the fascist government met to discuss the immediate future of Italy. While all in attendance were jittery about countermanding their leader, Mussolini was sick, tired, and overwhelmed by the military reverses suffered by the Italian military. He seemed to be looking for a way out of power. One of the more reasonable within the council, Dino Grandi, argued that the dictatorship had brought Italy to the brink of military disaster, elevated incompetence to levels of power, and alienated large portions of the population. He proposed a vote to transfer some of the leader's power to the king. The motion was passed, with Mussolini barely reacting. While some extremists balked and would later try to convince Mussolini to have those who voted with Grandi arrested, Il Duce was simply paralyzed, unable to choose any course of action. Shortly after the Grand Council vote, Mussolini, groggy and unshaven, kept his routine 20-minute meeting with the king, during which he normally updated Victor Emmanuel on the current state of affairs. This morning, the king informed Mussolini that General Pietro Badoglio would assume the powers of prime minister and that the war was all but lost for the Italians. Mussolini offered no objection. Upon leaving the meeting, he was arrested by the police, who had been secretly planning a pretext to remove the leader for quite some time. They now had the council vote of no confidence as their formal rationale. Assured of his personal safety, Mussolini acquiesced to this too, as he had to everything else leading up to his pitiful denouement. When news of Mussolini's arrest was made public, relief seemed to be the prevailing mood. There was no attempt by fellow fascists to rescue him from the penal settlement on the island of Ponza, to which he was committed. The only remaining question was whether Italy would continue to fight alongside its German allies or surrender to the Allies. On July 25, 1992, the 1992 Summer Olympics opened in Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain. Beginning in 1994, the International Olympic Committee decided to hold the Summer and Winter Olympics in alternating even-numbered years. The Games were opened by His Majesty the King, Juan Carlos I, and the Olympic torch was lit from a flaming arrow launched by Antonio Rebollo. The 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona and the 1992 Winter Olympics in Albertville were the last Olympic Games to be held in the same calendar year. They also marked the second and final time that two consecutive Olympic Games took place in Western Europe. Barcelona became the second city in a Spanish-speaking country to host the Summer Olympics, following Mexico City in 1968. The Barcelona Games were widely praised for their organization, enthusiastic volunteers, sportsmanship, and the hospitality of the Spanish people. Many commentators have described them as among the greatest Olympic Games ever held. The event helped showcase Spain's modern democratic identity while bringing international attention to Barcelona and Catalonia. Hosting the Olympics also transformed the city through major redevelopment projects, and the venues have continued to be used long after the Games. The lasting success of Barcelona's Olympic legacy later served as a model for future host cities, including London 2012. The 1992 Summer Olympics were also significant because they were the first to take place after the end of the Cold War and the first Summer Games since 1972 to be free of major international boycotts. That year also marked South Africa's return to Olympic competition after a 32-year ban imposed because of the country's apartheid policies. The unified team, representing most of the former Soviet republics except the Baltic states, finished first in the medal standings with 45 gold medals and 112 medals overall. And on July 25, 2000, Air France Flight 4590, a Concorde from Charles de Gaulle Airport, Paris, France, to John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York City, New York, in the United States, crashed shortly after takeoff. All 109 passengers and crew members on board and 4 people on the ground were killed. It was the only fatal Concorde accident during its 27-year operational history. During takeoff from Charles de Gaulle Airport, the Concorde struck a piece of debris that has been left on the runway by another aircraft, Continental Airlines Flight 55, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10. The impact caused one of the aircraft's tires to burst, sending high-speed fragments into the underside of the wing. The debris damaged parts of the landing gear, preventing it from retracting properly, and ruptured a fuel tank. Escaping fuel ignited, leading to a fire and loss of power in the 2 engines on the left side of the aircraft. Although the Concorde became airborne, the combination of engine failure, increased drag from the extended landing gear, and fire damage to the flight controls made it impossible for the crew to maintain control. About 2 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft crashed into a hotel in the nearby town of Gonesse. Following the accident, the entire Concorde fleet was grounded. After engineers introduced a series of safety modifications to the aircraft, Concorde returned to commercial service on November 7, 2001. However, declining demand, particularly after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, led to the aircraft's retirement. Air France ended Concorde operations in May 2003, and British Airways followed in November. The pilots on board consisted of Captain Christian Marty, 53, who had been with Air France since 1967. He had 13,477 flight hours, including 317 hours on the Concorde. Not only was he a great airline pilot, but he was also specialized in long-distance windsurfing, as well as rally driving, cycling, skiing, and hang gliding. The co-pilot was First Officer Jean Marco, 50, who had been with Air France since 1971 and had 10,035 flight hours with 2,698 of them on the Concorde. And the flight engineer was Gilles Jardinot, 58, who had been with Air France since 1968. He had 12,532 flight hours, of which 937 were on the Concorde. He also flown the Sud Aviation Caravelle, Dassault Falcon 20, Boeing 727, 737, and 747 aircraft. The nationalities consist of 1 Austrian, 2 Danes, 8 French, 97 Germans, 1 American, 1 Algerian, 1 from Mauritius, and 2 Poles. The flight was chartered by the German company Peter Dahlmann Cruises. The passengers were on their way to board the cruise ship MS Deutschland in New York for a 16-day cruise to Manta, Ecuador. They included German football manager Rudi Fasnacht and German trade union board member Christian Goetz. Well, that's all I have for today. If you like what you hear, don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe. This is Stephen Luke, and I'll see you next time for another history update. And those who are from Britain and France, never forget the Concorde.